Welcome to Younger Older. I'm Dave Wager, your host here in the studios at Silver Birch Ranch on the campus of the Nicolet Bible Institute. And today I have a good friend, an old friend. Are you older than I am?
No, I think you have me.
I have you by a little bit.
When's your birthday?
April 7th. Oops,
Oh,
you
yeah.
didn't hear that out there, did you?
I'm August, so maybe you have me by a few months.
There you go. But we are about the same age, and both of us have experienced God's faithfulness through the many years that we've lived, and in different ministries. And Don's been a good friend for many years. Watching him as a youth pastor and being in the start of Don Shire Ministries, which is now DSM Ministries.
DSM International.
International.
Yeah.
And so what we wanted to do is get together and talk to you about how we got into ministry. How did you get into ministry in the first place? And now it's been this many years later. Did you ever think in life that God would use you the way He's using you today when you were 25 years old?
No, as a matter of fact, if I would have seen the blueprint, if I would have known what it was going to be today, I wouldn't have signed up.
Okay.
For a couple reasons. One is I'm not qualified. I don't feel like I have the proper training for what I do today. And yet God, just like He did with the disciples, is letting me do it.
Right.
And so I love where I am today in ministry and being able to serve, but I would have been scared to death to sign up for it.
You know, that sparks a thought, though. So many times today, as I look at young people who want to get into ministry, they ask me what they need to do to get into ministry. So someone will come to camp, and they know I've been here since day one. And it's like, well, how do I get into a position like yours? What qualifications do I need? And my honest answer is, just don't be good at anything.
I suppose.
And they look at me and they go, that can't be. I said, no, honestly, I'm really not overly excellent at anything. I'm not a good carpenter. I'm not a good business. I can do those things. It's not stuff I love to do. I tell you what I do love. I love God, and I really want to share His message with people. And in my weakness, I've seen God's strength through the years. And so there's a leading and there's a guiding, but that's the qualification if you want to have a qualification.
I think that what you just said, you love serving God, and it's like you love your wife. I love my wife. I will do whatever it takes to make my wife happy.
Sure.
Because I love her. I live to try to make her happy. And it's the same thing with our relationship with God. When you love God and you love serving God, you do whatever you can and you do your best.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you need to be all the way qualified for it, but that's what I guess I found is that when I give my best, God uses it.
Yep. And you get up every day and you work. You have something in front of you and you do it, whatever it might be, to care for people and to spread the word. And you know, for me, it was growing up in the camping world. My dad started the ministry here. He started to work with his church, and I didn't really have a choice. So I had to come up here and be a part of it. And through time, I saw God use this place to the point where I said, I want to do this. I want to be a part of people's lives changing. Mm-hmm. And so then I started to just come up and volunteer. And I eventually actually went, when I was at Wheaton College, I chose to be an education major because back then camp was only part-time, only during the summer. And I thought, well, I need a profession where I can get off in the summer, get paid throughout the year, and go serve at camp. And so that's how it started. Mm-hmm. And now I've been here, this is my 57th summer, so it's been a few summers, and I don't even know what life is like without it. But in that sense, it wasn't that there was a great plan or a great idea that somehow I would do this for the rest of my life. There was a burden that God gave me. Mm-hmm. And I would tell any young person, spend time serving God right now in your local church and camps like Silver Birch Ranch and go on mission trips and that kind of thing. Get your heart so that it's pricked by something more important than just existence.
You know, I was down in Nashville, for those listening or watching. I play trumpet, if you don't know that, and that's kind of been my foot in the door my whole life. And fortunately, that's something I do probably better than average. And so the Lord has used that in my life. But I was in Nashville doing some recording, and I was introduced to this very well-known man who helps people get started. And,
Sure.
and I'm thinking this could be my big break, and I asked him, what would be your advice to someone like me? And his advice was very simple. Just play wherever someone will listen to you.
Yep.
And just do your best, but don't worry about trying to hit the fame and fortune. Just play where people will listen.
Yep.
And that's what I started doing, and that's what I do today. I'm still traveling. I'm still playing my trumpet, and I just go where I'm invited. I don't negotiate a contract. I just go for whatever they'll give me. And what's so unique about that is we're sending out over $50,000 a month to help orphans and widows and refugees around the
Sure.
world. And really, for me, David, it started out with a very simple prayer. Lord, if you can use me, just show me where. And just watching how God opened the doors through the years. My beginning was Silver Birch Ranch. Pop Rezak
Yep.
was a mailman.
Yep.
Worked with my dad.
Huh.
And my dad said, my kid plays trumpet, and sometimes he plays in churches. You think your church would be interested? And Tim was a worship director, I believe, at that time.
Okay.
And so I got invited to come and do a program, and your dad heard me play and said, hey, listen, we have a camp in Wisconsin, and how would you like to come up and be a part of our family camp? And that was the beginning of it all.
Yep.
And eventually you and I started a radio program about 30.
Oh man.
35,
we did it for about 25 years.
Yeah, about maybe 40 years ago
Yeah.
we started that. And it's just so nice to see how God has used all those little things through the years. A 10-minute radio program, and ministering to young people here, and then me being able to participate in men's retreats and lead the worship there for many years, and the Lord has just used it all in both of our lives.
Absolutely.
To put us where we're supposed to be today.
Yep. Well, it's kind of interesting too. There's I do a thought for the day that goes out. It's just a written one. That started because of the Conversations program you and I did.
Yeah, that's
and I remember, you may not even remember, but we were doing some programs, and you asked me one time, where do you come up with these topics? And I said, well, every day I journal and I write some thoughts down, and then you said, well, what do you do with them when you're done? I said, well, normally nothing. I just throw them out. I really never go back to them. It's just I write them down so I have them. You said, well, send them to me then. And so I did. Now I don't know how many hundreds of people get those still. And what was that, 30 years ago, 40 years ago or something like that. So,
well, I sure enjoyed doing that program because it was a conversation between us that just got shared with a whole bunch of people.
Right.
But yeah, you're a good teacher, Dave, and you're a good thinker.
Yeah.
And I've always considered a privilege to be able to glean from that.
Well, I just enjoy getting together and talking with you for the same reasons. Because I remember when we were doing those programs, you were being asked quite a bit to go to Latin American countries to play your trumpet.
Yep.
But you weren't overly into missions at that point. You were just kind of going into these Latin American countries to play your trumpet. You were actually, weren't you asked to go for somebody who couldn't make it or something? Or
well, yeah. What happened was Bruce Del Monte has a ministry to the Spanish-speaking world. He has a radio program that's on every day and does evangelistic trips. And he had a trumpet player from the States that used to travel with him. And he was having a board meeting in Florida, and he was telling his board, hey, Archie can't travel with me anymore. He's got some family things going on, and he just told me that he's not going to be able to make it. And he said the trumpet just draws people to the meetings. Do any of you have any contacts of trumpet players? And a friend of mine happened to be on his board and said, yeah, how about Don up in Chicago? And so what they had no idea of is that was my turning point in my life just a few days before that, where I finally gave up to God. Yeah. Grew up in the church and taught Sunday school. I did everything I was raised to do.
At this point, you were in business down in Chicago.
Yeah. And so I just I just started playing, and I started traveling with this Bruce Del Monte. We saw, he says, Don, you still playing your trumpet? Yeah. Well, could you come with me to Honduras? He had no idea. I just rededicated my life to the Lord.
Right.
And so now I'm on my way to Honduras, and I said, I don't even speak Spanish. He says, yeah, your trumpet speaks it just fine.
There you go.
And he was right. It drew a crowd. The evangelists gave the gospel, and we saw hundreds of people come to know Jesus.
Yeah.
And I just was so thankful to God that he, if you confess your sins, he's faithful and he's righteous
Absolutely.
to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And God, he picked me up and said, let's go. And we're still going.
Now, what amazes me is that I remember those days where you're just going and, whenever the Hispanic community, wherever it was, they would want you to come and play your trumpet. And I thought, well, yeah, that's a little bit more their culture. I'm Swedish. I'm not sure Swedes are into as much of the trumpet as some other cultures might be. And yet, as I looked at it, I thought, wow, it keeps expanding. You keep going to other cultures with this trumpet.
Dave, is now 36 countries.
There you go. And somehow it went from...
Next year it'll be 37. I'm on my way to Chile in January. I told you I go anywhere I'm asked, and if the calendar has the open date, I just say sure. And sometimes it's a missionary that's at one of my concerts that says, hey, would you come to Poland? And I just say yes. Would you come to the Philippines? Yes. Set a date and just go do it. And the Lord has continued to open doors like that. And some of those places are repeat.
And you're really not out there advertising to do this.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Matter of fact, that's one of the unique things I think about our ministry is I don't handle rejection real well.
Nope.
And so I don't get on the phone and call churches to see if they'll have me. I couldn't handle all the no's.
Yeah, no.
And yet my schedule is full of opportunities to serve. The Lord touches hearts, and they call, and the schedule is full. And it's just, to me, it's an amazing thing. I don't ask people to support. We have about 40 supporting churches now. Haven't asked one of them. They've, after a concert or something like that, they've said, you know what, we want to get behind this ministry.
Yeah.
And we continue to see our needs grow, but then the income grows right along with it. Yeah. And God continues to just be so faithful.
I would encourage those younger listening to listen to something right now that I'm going to say, because it's something I wish you would understand. When Don goes and he plays a concert or is asked to go somewhere, he doesn't negotiate a price.
Right.
He goes because of the opportunity, and God takes care of him.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody asks me to speak somewhere and I go, I never negotiate a price. I don't do that. And it's not because I think all those that do are evil. It's because I honestly think it's the greatest privilege in the world to be asked to speak on behalf of God and talk about what he said in his word and to help people understand him in any way, shape, or form. But even more than that, I'm trying to pass that on to the next generation, that going and doing the King's work is not about making a great salary and making a good retirement for yourself, and not about personal gain. It's really about representing the King and letting the King put you wherever he puts you. Yeah. When you look in the Bible, you see there's people that were given 5 talents and 2 talents and 1 talent. And what God was interested in was, what do you do with what I've given you? Not how do you just go and make more for yourself? No, if you've been given 5, great. Use the 5, make 5 more. Go ahead, but use it for the kingdom work. And there was an older guy years ago who used to come to camp, and you know him, and he used to have to fly over here from another country, and we'd do a lot of our family camps. And he always had a rule. You'd think this guy would charge you enough to pay for the plane ticket and pay, but whenever I asked him what it cost to have him come over, he goes, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, you got to do better than whatever. I want an idea. He goes, no, you're never going to get one from me. And he said this one time to me. He said, Dave, if you pay me too much, I'm not going to give it back. And if you pay me too little, I'll never complain. Mm-hmm. Because I've never trusted in you. So it's
good answer. Yeah.
And ever since then, You know, here's the you know how we all have those moments in life where I think God solidifies something in our life. And I remember once when I was younger and camp was just starting, year-round work. And so we were up here, and I think I was making $300 or $600 a month. I can't remember now which it was, but it was one of those two. And I went to a church in the local area to speak. It was a Sunday night, I remember. And as I spoke, no big deal. It was a church service on a Sunday night. I've been to thousands of them. And so I spoke, and at the end, they took an offering and handed it to me. And I still remember it was a little over $700 in cash. And I had $700 in my hand in cash after speaking at a church. Now remember, I'm making $300 or $600 a month. And they hand me this and tell me to do whatever I want with it. And I looked at it, and you know my first thought was, I got to remember this message. That was my first thought. And immediately it was as if God just beat on me at that moment. Like, really? You would use my word? You would use my word that way? Mm-hmm. And I made a commitment that day that I would never take money personally for speaking. I wouldn't do it. It would go to camp. I mean, not that I wouldn't take the money, it just wouldn't go to me. Mm-hmm. And I would say, for the ministry here, you can pay me whatever you want. That's what I'll live on. And I go out, they can pay me $100,000 if they want. It's going to go to camp. Mm-hmm. And that has been one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me.
There's freedom
ministry.
there. Yeah,
There's freedom.
I do the same thing. I'm on a salary, and that's controlled by a board.
Yep.
And if it's a good offering, if it's a bad offering, it doesn't affect anything. It all goes to ministry, right. You know, and keeps the ministry moving forward. And yeah, there's a freedom in that. You don't feel, well, you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But now, as I look at your ministry today, you went from playing trumpet in Latin American countries to start with, to now there's orphanages, widow homes, various countries. How in the world did you get into non-trumpet things?
It's just looking at what's around you. When I'm in India and I see a little boy standing on the street corner, obviously not having eaten for a long time and homeless, I just feel like I should do something. Why? Well, God says to.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, I'll see a pastor who is trying to oversee some of these kids. I remember one pastor. He would go to the train station, and he would bring some food with him and just sit down with some of the street kids, and give them their supper and give them a lesson from God's Word. And that turned into an orphanage. Because I saw this guy trying, and I said, would you like help? And of course he said yes, and so we rented a small place, and next thing I knew, we had an orphanage. But you know what happens? Those kids get hungry again.
Yeah, they do.
And all of a sudden you realize you're in this, you've made a commitment here. You're in this for good, and God provided for it. And then it seemed like every time I went somewhere for a few years, I'd come home and tell Kathy, well, we started a new orphanage.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I was thinking the same thing, because I'd be talking to you, go, well, I was in India, I'm there, and it's like, we started an orphanage there. I'm going, really? Just start an orphanage wherever you go.
Yeah, it's just been an amazing ride. And you know, in Poland, helping young people there that need to hear the gospel. Now, that's not an orphanage, but we got involved with a camp there, and have been helping them. I was able, when I was there doing concerts in churches in Poland, I got invited to prisons. And like, I remember one prison in particular that this pastor had been trying to get in there for years, and the warden wouldn't let him in. But I was from America, and I played trumpet.
There you go.
And so he let me in to do a concert, and I shared the gospel. The guards and the prisoners accepted Christ, and then he called the pastor back and said, "Would you come once a week and start teaching these young men? They need to hear more about this." You know, and so when you just go where the doors open, you get to see God just pave the way and the Holy Spirit speaks to hearts, and you get to be the person He uses in that instance.
Yeah. You know, if I'm talking to a young person right now, I'm encouraging them. Obviously, you need to be with somebody who's a little older that's been in ministry as a mentor. Mm-hmm. Get out there and go experience ministry. You can do it at camps like Silver Birch Ranch. You can do it in ministries. DSM.com?
DSMinternational.org.
DSMinternational.org. You can go there and just look at the trips that they might be offering or the experiences that they might be offering. You got to go to where God can grab your heart. And He always does that in service. He doesn't do it while you're sitting around doing nothing. You go serve. I remember I told you earlier that I wanted to get into Christian camping and did what I needed to arrange to be in Christian camping. Went into teaching school so that I could get paid during the summer and etc. But the reason is because I was up here serving when I was in college. And I can remember that I took kids from my youth group in the Chicago area to camp, and I would invite 5 of the children that were in my youth group. I would invite 5 of them to come to camp, and I would challenge them each to bring a friend that didn't come to church. And then I would be their counselor for the week. Do you know, whenever I did that, I never saw where the 5 that came that weren't part of the church group, where they didn't come to know Christ that weekend. They always did. That week, of camp. And not only that, then they got involved in our youth work. And now I can point to young people who are in ministry today, have marriages that are working, etc., who are part of those kids. I got so excited about what God was doing on these grounds that I decided somehow I have to live up here and do this. And it wasn't because of the money, and it wasn't because of everything was developed already. There was nothing developed as far as year-round. The first year we were here, we spent most of our time digging ditches and putting pipes 6 feet underground so that they wouldn't freeze. That has very little to do with preaching the gospel at that point. However, it's what God called us to, and it was that getting excited because you were part of God doing something and then deciding the rest of my life I'm going to do that. And as I know your story and my story, that's how they go. You were playing the trumpet, and then you saw what else was there, and God started to prick your heart.
And one thing leads into the other. You know, like I just talked about Poland, so we'll stay there for a minute. Well, when the war started in Ukraine, which is right next to Poland, and all the refugees were flooding into Poland, I called my contact there and said, "You need help?" And he said, "Of course I do." And so we started taking care of refugees, which many came to know the Lord through this outreach. And then there was a church in Lviv that was brought to my attention, and I contacted them and actually went to Ukraine during the war. And the pastor there has told me that over 2,000 people have come to know Jesus Christ as a result of that ministry.
Wow.
They receive the refugees in. A lot of them come without clothes on their, or just the clothes on their back, and no food. And we take them in, we help them, we go to the bus station, we go to the train stations where they've been standing in line trying to get out of the country and distribute food, but everyone gets the Bible. Everyone has the opportunity to pray with someone. And we just keep seeing more and more people come to know the Lord. But see, it all started with the trumpet in Poland.
Right.
And so, yeah, if you're a young person today, well, what did Moses do? What did God use in his ministry? A staff.
Right.
You see a picture of a patriarch with a staff, you know it's Moses.
Yep.
And what's in your hand, I guess is what I would say if you're listening right now. What can you use? And maybe you're saying, I don't know. Just say, Lord, use me. Show me where. And then when those opportunities come up, you have what it takes to go through those doors.
You know, one of the stories I love to hear from you is how you had the burden to help supply water in India. Mm-hmm. Why did you want to do that?
Well, because people come to the water. And so what do? You put the well right outside the door of the church.
And I remember the challenge that secular people gave you, and that it was like, let your God supply the water. Mm-hmm. And when you got back from India that time and we were talking, it was like you just took that personally. It was like, God could supply water.
He's done it before.
Yeah, and so eventually there was water.
This was an area where they had drilled wells, but they weren't producing water.
Right.
And we drilled one well, and it produced water.
There you go.
And
that was a testimony to all those who didn't have water, correct?
Yeah. Well, see, the whole village would come to church and hear what's going on. And the village I'm thinking of now is in Africa, in Ghana, and the chief there was not a believer at all. And his wife came, the last time I was there, she came up to me and she said, my son was really sick, and we went to the voodoo doctor, and he couldn't do anything, and we saw the Christians in that church that you built, and we saw them singing and dancing and praying, and so I brought my son over there, and my son was dying, and they prayed over my son, and he was healed.
Wow.
And she said, I am a believer now.
Yeah.
And so was my son. She said, would you come and talk to my husband again? I want him to go to heaven too.
Oh,
well, I
man.
did, and he did not, to my knowledge, profess, would make a confession of sin or anything, but God is in the house.
Right.
And once again, water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great to be able to live your life where you take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you, and always look for a way to use them to reach the people around you. I mean, God's given us a command, and I know you've repeated this before, that we take care of the widows and the orphans. And when God tells us to do something and we position ourselves to do it, we get to see God work.
Yeah. And by the way, God can do it without us.
Oh, absolutely.
But we get to.
We get to be part
used.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll never forget those thoughts when I played football in college. And one of the first things that the coaches said, and I don't remember their exact words, were very simple, that this is a pretty rough game. And here's what's going to happen when you get hurt. We're going to drag you off the field. And somebody else is going to go in there and play. And we're going to finish the game. And I thought, that's a harsh reality right there. You get hurt.
That. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, you get hurt, and the coaches say you're going to get dragged right off the field, and we're going to keep playing. Yeah. And I still understand that about life now. It is a privilege. It was a privilege to play ball. And when you get hurt, you lost the privilege. It's a privilege to be a part of God's work. And I can do that till the day I die somehow. And when I leave, God's work will not be hindered in any way, shape, or form. And I get to be excited to be a part of that. Well, if you want to know more about Don Shire's ministry, or the ministry God has him in right now, dsminternational.org.
Correct.
dsminternational.org. You can look for some mission trips to go on, or just contact them, or support some of the stuff he's doing. There's always money flowing out of that place.
You can sponsor some of our orphans if you'd like to do that. There's a page there for that.
All right. I'm Dave Wager at Silver Birch Ranch. Goodbye for now.